So I'm going to get us going. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining for AFT and the National Agricultural Land Network's State Soil Health Program Learning Lab. For those who don't know me, I'm Samantha Levy. I'm American Farmland Trust's Senior Policy Manager for Conservation and Energy. And I'm joined by a wonderful group of folks who are going to speak today and a few folks who are helping us run the background. Thank you so much to you all. I also want to thank the National Council of Environmental Legislators, the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, and the National Healthy Soils Policy Network, of which AFT is a national affiliate, for sharing this webinar invitation with their networks. And to thank you all, the land trusts, conservationists, farmers, ranchers, state legislators and their staff, state agency folks, and for the congressional staff who were able to join us today. A little housekeeping, which doesn't even seem necessary, but keep yourselves on mute. Everybody's doing a great job with that. Questions in the chat, if anybody has questions or needs, the chat is there for that function. We'll do a Q&A at the end. And your choice, camera on or off. As you can see, I'm spotlit and we're going to be spotlighting the speakers. So up to you if you want to be on or off camera, just listening in. For those who don't know AFT, we're a national nonprofit with regional offices across the country. Our mission is to save the land that sustains us, keep land and farming and keep farmers on the land. And we do that programmatically out in the field with farmers and ranchers. And then we also, do advocacy directly in state houses and at the capital of our nation and everything in between. So before I introduce our first speaker and review our agenda, I'm going to pass the mic to Jess Hall at AFT to introduce the National Agricultural Land Network.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Sam. My name is Jess Hall. I am the coordinator of American Farmland Trust National Agricultural Land Network, or as we call it, the NALN, or the network. For the last 5 years, farm and ranch land protection practitioners have joined the NALN to network and learn from each other by engaging in discussions and sharing resources. Membership is completely free and open to both individuals and organizations. Non-benefits include a monthly newsletter and access to an online community platform where over 1,500 members from every single state are able to connect. I'll put a link in the chat for more information on how to join, as well as my email if you have any questions. If you already are a non-member and want a little tutorial on navigating the online community platform, or if you'd like to add other members to your organization to the non, just send me an email and I am happy to help. Thank you so much, Sam. I'm really excited for today's session, and back to you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to just briefly review our agenda, and then I'm going to pass it along to Bianca, who's going to give our first presentation. So we're going to begin with Bianca's presentation on the soil health basics, sort of lay a strong foundation, if you will. And then we're going to move to a live demonstration of AFT's conservation program dashboard to give you all some more resources and tools and information. And then we're going to pivot to hearing from a panel of experts and advocates who are going to take us on a deep dive into a few state soil health programs. And we're going to finish with the audience Q&A. So be sure to be putting your questions in the chat throughout the entirety, and we'll get to them at the end. But without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic over to Dr. Bianca Moebius-Clune, who leads AFT's Climate and Soil Health Initiative and who served as the founding director of NRCS's Soil Health Division from 2014 on. And Bianca's going to go over the basics of soil health and why that matters. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise, Bianca.
There we go. I found the unmute button. Really glad to be here. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up today. And I really am excited about this panel and hearing from all of you, hearing your questions. So I'm going to just very briefly in 10 minutes give you a basics and benefits of soil health 101. So review for many of you, maybe some of you are here and will learn a little something, hoping to inspire us all to really dive in thinking about these topics. I'm always very excited about soil health. So basically, what is soil health? Why does it even matter? How can farmers get there? And are we there yet? Spoiler alert, no, we're not. That's why we're here together today. So what is soil health in a nutshell? It is the continued capacity of the soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. I'm saying vital living ecosystem here because it is an ecosystem. A handful of soil has more organisms in it than there are people on Earth, right? So it is a living ecosystem that farmers manage in order to allow for all of the benefits, all of the things that we expect from our soils. So why does it matter? Well, there's a lot of challenges that we face as society and that farmers and ranchers face across the nation in agriculture. And those, risk is huge for farmers, and it seems to just be increasing. Risks like extreme rainfall and drought, temperature extremes, water quantity and quality, new pests and pathogens, expensive inputs, and market issues, right? All of those make it really hard for farmers to do what they do best, which is to farm. And soil health, I see as a really great win-win solution. It doesn't solve all problems. It's not the silver bullet. Obviously, there's a lot at stake here. But when we use soil health as a solution, when we build soil health management systems, we can reduce that risk. We can stabilize yields and generally increase them. We can build resilience to all of these extremes that we just talked about, including reducing pest and pathogen pressures, because there's that living ecosystem of balanced microbes and other organisms in the soil. We can reduce inputs, such as nutrient inputs. Those can be really expensive. Also, fuel inputs can really reduce as we reduce tillage. And as the soils are better, they are more easily worked, requiring less diesel. We can save water. That is very costly, especially as we move west in this country. And we can sequester carbon, and that means that we can tap into some markets. And as we're saving water, we can tap into some markets that haven't been there previously. And increasingly, corporations are really pitching in, looking for those products that are grown in these new ways. So lots of opportunity. It is really a way that farmers can make more money and serve society in all these other ways. And the way that they do that is basically by taking care of this ecosystem, right? All of these microbes, all of these organisms that are living in the soil and that are dependent on the soil are basically there when we build when they build a great house, right? These aggregates, these soils, are home for our livestock. And if you didn't know it yet, you are a livestock owner because you probably have a little spot at least of grass. If you don't have a farm yourself, you may have a potted plant. There are organisms there. Therefore, you own livestock. We need to care for those livestock. We need to feed those livestock. And farmers have the big responsibility there. When they use the 4 soil health management principles, help conserve that soil ecosystem, because when these 4 principles are in place, we provide a better home for all those organisms and we feed those organisms. And when we take care of them, they take care of us. So what are those principles? Minimizing disturbance and maximizing soil cover. Those are the 2 principles that largely protect the home. Maximizing living roots and maximizing biodiversity is what feeds all of those organisms. So how is it that farmers do that? Just very briefly, there are a number of practices. This is not all of them, but these are the core conservation practices that NRCS has standards for. We developed this last one while I was at NRCS, Soil Carbon Amendment. All the other ones have been in place for a long time. And this table basically shows how each of those principles that I just talked about can be addressed by each of these practices. And so when a farmer is building their system, they have to adapt their system to incorporate any of these practices that work into a new system where those practices are adjusted to each other in order to address those principles. And that way they can give better care to the livestock. What do we see across the country? I'm going to go through these quickly because it's always better to really see it. Most people have seen degraded soils. A lot of people haven't seen really healthy soils. And when we have healthy soils, for example, we get better infiltration. The soil acts like a sponge. It stores that water. Now we're not getting that runoff. We're not losing those soils. We don't have to put them back, put all sorts of energy into that. And we're much better off in a drought. we see examples of this across the entire country. So here's just one example. On the left, we've got a system that is nicely covered. We don't see that puddling. It looks like you could get onto that field and do work. And here we have puddling, crusting, ponding that would make it really hard to do any management. Similarly here, reduced tillage and cover crops. We can see the water is clean coming off here. We can see a muddy mess on the right. Again, here in Indiana, a farmer on the left that has implemented a soil health management system with cover crops, with better rotations, with reduced tillage on the left, and that season was particularly wet. You can see this corn crop is doing very well, whereas here a lot of that nitrogen was lost and the corn crop is really suffering from dense compacted soils that didn't get enough air at some point in the season. Here, diversified New Hampshire system, vegetables, grains, livestock. We've got grazing, cover crop, and crop rotation, reduced tillage as well, versus a conventional vegetable system with no inputs and lots of tillage. And you can see the difference in these soils, right? Nice brownie style cookie crumbles. It looks really dark, lots of carbon there. The system is doing much better. 1 year of cover crop in this particular example. 1 year of cover crop doing really heavy rainfall prevented the row between these tomatoes from washing out. And here we see massive washouts and really big damage. Just 1 year of cover crop can actually make a difference. Lots of years of cover crop. Here we had a drought in 2012. And on the right, 144 bushels per acre. Nevertheless, even though there was that drought, on the right, we have the neighbor's field in a conventional system, 40 to 80 bushels rolling corn. You can see it's really stressed. Here, as we go west, we get drier situations. In the Dust Bowl is when a lot of this, oh, I did not switch these, sorry. The conventional system is on the right. The reduced tillage and covers is on the left here. And here we have a nicely covered crop. This hasn't been tilled as much. This system is doing better. And this is the kind of issue that we saw when we had our soils not covered. And then the new one on the block in terms of management, biochar versus no biochar. Here we had 280% yield increase when biochar was added to a Washington wheat system versus on the right, that crop really didn't grow so well, basically because of water, because of pH issues. So we see that it's good for the bottom line when we look at these images. And AFT now has 26 case studies in 11 states in a lot of different production systems. Here's just one example of the Thorndikes in Illinois, where they were able to save $43 per acre once they adopted these practices and got to success, made $36,000 more on, I think this was 2,600 acres in corn and soy. So we see these kinds of examples. This is about an average example. We see anything from a few dollars per acre, but quality of life improving all the way to $600 some per acre in savings on almond crops. So we see these benefits. We would love for this to be the new conventional agriculture, for this to be the new normal, for everyone to farm in these kinds of ways where a full soil health management system is in place. But where are we at? Well, we've got a ways to go. Right now, no-till, reduced-till have been around for quite a while, so we're close to half of the acres are reducing tillage in one way or other. But cover cropping, we were at 6% in 2017, 7% in 2022, depending on which data sets you look at. That goes up and down a bit, but that's not enough. And if we keep going at that rate, by 2040, we're certainly not going to get to 100%. We're not going to get to a new conventional agriculture at that rate. So how do we speed it up? We don't even know about biochar and other innovative practices. But when I take heart thinking about how we have adopted cell phones, we have adopted using electricity, we have adopted, everybody's got a refrigerator in their house, right? Technologies that are a better way to go do make it into the norm eventually. How do we do that with agriculture? How do we do that with these practices? So that's what we're here to talk about today. We need to understand what it is that's keeping farmers from adopting these practices and make it the easy way to go. Remove the barriers for them. So financial barriers, social barriers, technical barriers, all of these are really critical. They're very much present in farmers' lives as they think about these. Financial barriers like equipment costs. In making that investment in new equipment can be really hard. Justifying the investment in cover crop seeds when somebody doesn't know what their return on investment is can be hard. Accessing new markets. There are impacts of policies that really influence financially what that's like for a farmer. Technical pressures, right? Having a peer network that you can go to for support, having a mentor, a trusted advisor that can help somebody get from where they're at right now, where they're grappling with how would I even start, to in a risk-free way, try it a little bit until they're comfortable and then really kind of moving forward from there. And then the social barriers, right? It's a paradigm shift initially. It takes going from I'm just fine the way that I am, I'm going to do it the way my grandpa did, to, wow, there's actually a new way and it makes sense and it's okay to try it and I have the support to go ahead and try it. So with that, I'm going to pass to Samantha, who's going to keep taking us through, because we're here to talk today about all of the programs we have in place across the nation. So back to you.
Thank you so much, Bianca. That was a fantastic way to lay the foundation for us. So I put into the chat a couple of links so that folks can access that case study from Illinois, the Thorndikes, and then all the other case studies that AFT has produced that are looking at particular farms across the nation, some of the practices they've adopted, and some of the benefits financially and otherwise that they have seen from them. So I hope that you'll look at those. Before we shift gears to Kayla's presentation and our panel, Bianca, if you can just put that deck back up on the second to last slide. I just want to say a few words about federal conservation programs because they've been around for decades and they often lay a foundation for the state programs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And you can go to the next slide, Bianca. So through farm bills in recent history, Congress has created a suite of programs to address the barriers that Bianca just mentioned and to support voluntary conservation practice adoption. This includes investments in financial assistance and then also in technical assistance. So you've got the cost component and then the other barriers, the information barriers, the risk, the sort of fear, the how do I do it, and address those information gaps. And these programs are popular, they are generally oversubscribed, and you can go to the next slide. They include the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, which invests in new practices for short-term contracts, the Conservation Stewardship Program, which helps farmers continue and maintain practices, expand to new systems, bundle practices together, and those contracts go up to 5 years. And then the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which on a regional scale invests in these practices through a partner. And then there are a couple of other conservation programs, less of our focus today, but the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, and then the Conservation Reserve Program. And on the right, this pie chart gives you a little bit of a sense of the investments. This is an old chart. It does not include the recent investments by the Inflation Reduction Act or the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. These programs, through those bills, have received record funding increases to address some of this nationwide demand, and we hope to keep building on that. So these programs are implemented through NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, an agency within USDA, and they're implemented through a team of field agents and then partners who provide technical assistance, helping farmers and ranchers identify resource concerns, develop conservation plans, identify the practices and how to implement them, and more. And now you can get rid of the deck, Bianca. Thank you. So these programs have represented an essential infrastructure of support that the state programs we're about to talk about build off of and complement. But the federal programs often leave gaps. And that is what we're going to explore more of on today's webinar. So let's start our deep dive into state programs that are complementing this work at NRCS to help with conservation practice adoption. And to kick us off, I'm going to hand the mic to Kayla, AFT's Senior Farmland Protection and Policy Specialist at the FIC, the Farmland Information Center. And she's going to demonstrate how you can use this wonderful tool that she and others at the FIC created. to learn more about state conservation programs. Kayla.
All right, thank you for that rundown, Sam. That was helpful. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start by giving a brief background about this project, and then we're going to share our screen and show you the dashboard directly. So just to give some background, the Farmland Information Center, which is a national initiative at AFT that I work in, we serve as a clearinghouse of information about AFT's mission areas, maintained with support from NRCS. So we provide educational resources, technical assistance, policy research, and more, including the tool that we are about to explore. I've been with the FIC for a little over 6 years, coming from a background in law, and have focused primarily on serving experts and practitioners on matters of program and policy. I'm also joined today by Ariel Loser, one of the FIC's information specialists, who's going to be helping me with the screen share. So just for some background, the State Conservation Program Dashboard, or what I'm going to call the dashboard, is an interactive database of programs that seek to expand the use of soil health practices. The dashboard includes information about 3 state approaches, each with its own table highlighting common program features and activities. The goal of this tool was to raise awareness about effective approaches and inform state and federal actions to the extent possible. So in creating this tool, we performed a full 50-state survey and review of programs by examining enabling laws, regulations, guidance documents on agency websites. We also disseminated a survey to program staff to collect more data, and then we later gave them an opportunity to review and offer corrections and feedback. In developing the program types and the factors that we studied, we relied on the expertise of many AFT partner staff, many of whom are on this call, who have experience in soil health, program, and farming. So we began developing this dashboard back in 2021 and published it with complementary materials in late 2023. So because this was a time-bound grant-funded effort, the information contained in the dashboard provides a snapshot of state efforts, and therefore is only current as of 2023, just a heads up. However, if any of you are aware of newer state programs that are not going to be included here, please don't hesitate to drop links in the chat and provide information for others to see once you get a chance to check it out. We're going to be dropping a link in the chat at the end of the presentation, so you can see that whenever you get a chance. Oh, okay, excuse me. We're going to go ahead and start the demonstration. There we go. So Ariel's going to share our screen. Perfect. So we're going to actually start on the homepage of the FIC website, which is farmlandinfo.org. This website houses a searchable collection of resources related to farmland protection, on-farm conservation, and ag viability. It's linked to, but separate from AFT's website. This creates a firewall and ensures that the FIC doesn't contain any direct advocacy or solicitations, since we're primarily funded from federal dollars for educational purposes only. Okay, so from the FIC homepage, the dashboard can be accessed using the main navigation across the top of the page. If you hover over resources, you'll be able to browse our collection by resource type. So we've got data, laws, media, publications, sample documents, and tools. When you hover over tools, a secondary menu will pop up. You might need to scroll down a little bit to see all of the choices depending on how big your computer screen is. So we're going to choose policy dashboards. And once we click that, you'll see a search result page. And from here, you can click through to the State Conservation Program dashboard by clicking anywhere on that card. So now we're on the web page that hosts the dashboard. I'm going to start by giving a quick overview of what you can find on this page, and then we'll come back and look at the tool itself. So the page starts with a dashboard. And then we have some instructions on the best way to use the dashboard, including by opening it up in a new tab, which is going to allow you to see the data a bit easier. Under this section, next section called definitions, we describe each of the 3 program types that we're studying, and also link to an index, which defines the terms we're using in the dashboard that will categorize program features. Next, we have a link to our white paper, a review of state agricultural conservation programs, which contains some background about the project, our methodology and our approach, and some summary findings. We also identified in the paper some programs, more innovative programs that were not easily categorized into the 3 program types that we studied. So for example, the cover crop premium discount programs that are pretty popular in the Midwest, like the Illinois Fall Covers for Spring Savings Program. Those are featured in the white paper, but not on the dashboard. And finally on this page, you'll see a heading called downloadable data. These 3 links here are actually Excel spreadsheets that have the same data as the dashboard, just in a different format, if it's easier to see that way. So scrolling back up, we're going to go ahead and open the dashboard in a new tab so we can begin. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, it's organized into 3 program types. We have labeled as on-farm conservation programs, technical assistance capacity programs, and research and demonstration programs. On-farm conservation programs, these are the most common. They provide financial assistance, technical assistance, or sometimes both, directly to farmers and ranchers to make a plan for conservation on their operation and help cover the costs of putting that plan into action. Technical assistance capacity programs, which I often shorten to TA capacity, offer financial assistance to providers rather than individuals to increase staff and technical capacity in a state to then support farmers in implementing these practices. And finally, we've got research and demonstration programs. These are less common and focus on funding innovative on-farm research projects related to conservation practices and encouraging the peer-to-peer learning among farmers. All right, so we're going to start on-farm conservation. So now that we're in the meat of the dashboard, I'm going to show you some key features. So the main portion, the most information in this tool is actually in a table you'll find if you scroll down a little bit. So the table is comprised of a few important pieces. So at the top, we've got tabs that organize the program information into topics. So for example, we've got administration, which shows how the program got started. We got eligibility, inclusion, and access for farmers of color. We then have one or more program-specific tabs, which in this case are technical and financial assistance, which show how what the program actually does to help. And finally, we have outcomes, which is how programs demonstrate their success. Within each tab, you'll see several columns representing factors within which there are keywords, enabling us to kind of compare programs against each other. So as a reminder, information about each tab and each column within the tabs can be found in the index document that's linked on the dashboard's webpage. So in addition to these keywords in the table, there's also customized information available for each program under most of the factors. So if you find a program and you click anywhere in the row of the program you're looking at, so for example, we're going to look at Kansas. Kansas is non-point source program. If we click anywhere on that row, you'll see a secondary table appear below the primary table. So if we scroll down, you can see this additional text organized according to the column headings, the information about each factor specific to Kansas. So say I want to know what kinds of dedicated taxes and fees Kansas is using for this program. I can see under funding sources that this program is funded by the State Water Fund, which receives funding from general appropriations, but it also receives funding from casino taxes, municipal water, and fertilizer fees. So that's just an example of how to narrow down your search into one specific state's details. And nearly all of the columns in the dashboard have this additional state-specific information. However, if the keyword was like self-explanatory or there's just no more information available about it, one of the rows might actually be blank, and that is not an error. So next, we're going to check out the technical assistance capacity table. So on this tab, you can see it's formatted just like on-farm conservation with some slight differences in the tabs. So while like I said, the majority of information in the tool is in the table, I also want to show what these visuals are at the top. So on the right-hand side, you can see this map with the states highlighted in blue. This is the same map you saw on the landing page. However, it does allow you to also click on a state as a means of filtering the information. So if we click on Oregon, the table below changes to only show Oregon's 2 programs under this category. You'll also notice that the numbers in the 3 circles on the left side changed when I selected Oregon, or when Ariel selected Oregon. This is where our quantitative data appears, whereas the table itself is mostly full of qualitative information. So when a state is selected, these numbers reflect information for that state alone. So for Oregon, we can see that there are 2 TA capacity programs in the state. It has 90 conservation districts, which we included because most TA capacity programs function to support conservation districts at the local level. And the state spends about $56 million on average each year to fund these programs, which is fairly high for TA capacity programs. And then when no state is selected, you can click on the state again to deselect. These numbers zoom out to represent the total group of TA capacity programs in the country. So finally, we're going to take a look at our final program type, research and demonstration. So once again, you can see the structure mirrors the other 2 program types. Can you deselect? If not, you might have to refresh. It's a bit of an old tool that we had to build from scratch, so apologies if there are some glitches here and there. But in general, the structure is going to mirror the 2 program types. But this time I'm going to show you, that's how it's supposed to look. I'm going to show you how to use the filters to find some of the information you might be looking for. So say we want to look at outcomes on the far right, and say we want to know which of these 7 programs is measuring soil health as a means of tracking success. So we're going to open the drop-down menu, click on Soil Health Outcomes Tracked, and we can see here that California's Healthy Soil Program demonstration projects track soil health outcomes. To find out a bit more, you can actually click on the program and scroll down a bit. Again, this is a bit of an awkward scroll. It's one of the nature of building a table like this from scratch. And you can see under conservation outcome tracking, California's program tracks greenhouse gas reductions based on practice type and acres, but they also conduct soil organic matter tests before the project starts and annually during its term. This is a bit different from what we call soil conservation outcomes, which tend to measure things like nutrient loss and erosion. So that's kind of how we've divided those different kinds of outcomes. So that's it for the demonstration. Now that you have a sense of how to use the dashboard, you can use it to discover themes and compare how different programs across the country function in comparison to each other. And I will be on the panel and available for Q&A later in the session, so I'd be happy to provide any more details about our research at that point. Thanks so much. I'm going to send it back to you, Sam.
Thank you, Kayla. And thank you, Ariel, as well, for that perfectly timed demonstration. So now we're going to move to our panel. And Claire put a reminder in the chat. Thank you, Claire. Folks can pop questions in the chat as they come up. I've been answering a couple of them, but we'll have a final Q&A at the very end. So I am joined on this panel by Doug Wolfgang, who's the director of the Pennsylvania State Conservation Commission, Danielle Isaacson, the manager for Climate and Working Lands program at the Minnesota Farmers Union, Anna Larson, the associate policy director at California Climate Action Network, or CalCAN, Dean Bruce, the soil and water conservation specialist at the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, and Kayla, who you just heard from at AFT's FIC. So hopefully, I'm sure Jess is looking through all of the different faces and names to get everybody spotlit here. But while we wait for everybody to pop onto the panel, if you all, one at a time, can introduce yourself and then tell us briefly about your suite of state programs and investments that are put in place to help farmers or ranchers adopt soil health practices. And Doug, we will start with you and we'll go east to west.
Sam, thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I guess it's afternoon for most of us in the East anyway. But Doug Wolfgang, director of the State Conservation Commission, longtime PACE director prior to working in the commission. I've been in the commission since 2022, but led Pennsylvania's farmland preservation efforts for many years prior to that. So always good to work with AFT and all of you. But the State Conservation Commission operates under joint authorities here in Pennsylvania of our state departments of agriculture and environmental protection. We strive to find that balance or that equilibrium between agriculture, farming, and the environment. And we oversee funding and resources for 66 county conservation districts across the state. And provide financial and technical assistance for agricultural conservation practices. I'm just going to quickly highlight several programs that I feel would be worthwhile for the group. First being ACAP, we call it, the Ag Conservation Assistance Program, not to be confused with ACEP, which is the federal easement program, but Pennsylvania's Clean Streams Fund legislation from FY 22-23 created this new program for us, provides financial and technical assistance for ag BMPs, best management practices that improve water quality, soil health, and farm viability. We carry out this work in partnership with 66 county conservation districts across the state through delegation agreements. But since January of 2023, over 2,400 farmers across the Commonwealth have applied for funding. We have over 1,400 now signed contracts with farmers for practices. Many of these practices are structural. Pennsylvania is by large still a very animal agriculture state, and it's a thriving industry for us here in Pennsylvania. You know, despite all the challenges, it continues to be something that is a big sector of our ag economy. So many of those practices are concrete barnyards, manure storages, but also stream bank fencing, riparian buffers. And then on the agronomic side, worth noting, so far 71,000 acres of cover crops have been funded through this new program since 2023. So for us, that's very significant, certainly feeds into the whole soil health discussion. Second program, just to quickly highlight REAP, and again, not to be confused with a federal REAP program offered by USDA, but this is our Resource Enhancement and Protection Program. Flagship program for the Commission, has been in existence since 2007. It provides tax credits for ag BMPs and conservation practices, and also for equipment, for tillage equipment, no-till drills, crimpers, rollers, drones. Very popular and oversubscribed program. There's a current block of 13 million in credits. Programs administered by the Commission in partnership with our Department of Revenue. But eligible applicants receive anywhere from 50 to 75% of project costs, up to $250,000 over a 7-year period in tax credits. But those credits are increased under policy by the Commission to up to 90% if they're high priority practices in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And those practices in our case include soil health related practices. 4,000 farmers, 170 million in tax credits issued to date, 70 private sponsors who've monetized this for farmers by sponsoring a farm and then purchasing those credits to offset their own tax liability. Staggering 115,000 acres of cover crops through this program that we track since its first initial round. So very, very proud of that. Sustainable Agriculture Board, just to real quickly here, that's our state soil health regenerative ag program that we just started last year. Recognizing that we're investing a lot in larger conventional farms, that this is our way to really have an intentional focus on soil health, regenerative farming, and in doing so, also help the small diversified farming operations that do vegetable crops, specialty crops, direct marketing, that maybe don't rise to the top of our other priority funding areas, but still have unique and special conservation needs. So, two-part to it: focus on soil health, regenerative agriculture, and then also the small diversified farms. We're a leader in organic production, second or third. We're second or third in direct marketing here in Pennsylvania. So all worthwhile, but projects awarded under this program improve soil health, biodiversity, and climate resiliency. And then, part of that conversation has to be the market opportunities as well, because in order to be sustainable, it has to be profitable. So, looking for value-based supply chains and consumers who are increasingly wanting to know that food is produced in a sustainable and ethical way. But projects awarded here in this first round: silvopasture, agroforestry, rotational grazing systems, working buffers, composting, and orchard management. And then just real quickly, CEG is Conservation Excellence Grant Program, specific to the Chesapeake Bay, provided for under the Pennsylvania Farm Bill in 2019, only the second, I think, state level funded farm bill in the nation. And then the PACS program is a new program that we have to award farms who are the gold standard of stewardship. One of the requirements of that program is that there be a soil health component, and we use Cornell Cash Soil Health Score as a gauge for that. So we're trying to capture those farms that have really implemented good soil health. So thank you, Sam. Back to you.
Thank you, Doug. A lot of fantastic work going on in Pennsylvania. Appreciate you giving us that fulsome rundown. Danielle, if you would like to go next, talk about a couple of Minnesota's programs.
Yes, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Again, I'm Danielle Isaacson with Minnesota Farmers Union. For those of you who aren't familiar, MFU is a grassroots farmer membership organization where the membership really kind of sets our policy and the work that we do. And then over the past few years, climate resilience and soil health have really been growing priorities for membership. And so we do a lot of work with our State Department of Ag and other state agencies to really kind of support that work and bring our members' voices to that policy table. So similar to Pennsylvania, Minnesota has a lot of really great state level programs. So I'm going to focus in on, I'm going to highlight 3 here. So the first 2 are both administered by our Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And the first one is we have an ag water quality certification program that recently just reached its 10th year of operation and has certified over 1,600 producers in the state and 1.1 million acres. It's a very customized one-on-one process where a local certifier works with a local farmer to mitigate the risks to water quality on their farm. There's kind of a proprietary tool that the operation is run through, but then it's really leans on that individual relationship, walking, boots on the ground, walking the farm to identify any risks. And so the practices that are implemented through this program are, those we're familiar with through NRCS, those NRCS practice standards. And it's also a program that really was designed to recognize farmers too, right? Provide recognition for that voluntary conservation, protecting water quality. Another program out of our Department of Ag that's newer here is we have a soil health equipment grant that offers 50% cost share to producers up to $45,000 to purchase equipment to implement practices such as no-till, strip-till, cover crop, those soil health practices. This is a unique program and really fills this critical gap that we hear a lot about and see in conservation agriculture with equipment, right? Equipment's a big investment. It's complicated to invest in. And so showing up to really try and, work on soil health from different perspectives, different angles. And then lastly, I just want to highlight, we have a board of water and soil resources at the state, which is state level. And this board really operates kind of as the state's soil and water conservation agency and facilitates funding and training for our soil and water districts, which we have in each of our 87 counties here in Minnesota. And they have, had some great funding opportunities recently. They have a state soil health kind of funding program that is tied in with an RCPP award that they kind of administer and facilitate with the soil and waters, who then use that money to address concerns at the local level that their county needs, depending on, what people are interested in. If people are just starting to learn about cover crops, or if farmers are a little bit farther down their conservation journey, so they can be flexible too with how that funding and use it in the best places possible. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle. Dean, you're next on our westward journey.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name's Dean Bruce, and I work for the New Mexico Department of Agriculture. I'm a soil and water conservation specialist. Primary duties now, though, I am the technical co-lead on NMDA's Healthy Soil Program, and that's the program I'm going to talk about today. This program is relatively new. It was enacted in law in 2019 due to the Healthy Soil Act that was passed. We rolled it out very soon after that. And we do have a small research component, but the primary focus of the program is it offers competitive grants to individual farmers, ranchers, land managers, as well as local governmental entities that are capable of supporting soil health. These can include, but are not limited to, pueblos, tribes, and nations, soil and water conservation districts, land grants, acequias, as well as NMSU, New Mexico State University's Cooperative Extension Service. And so these are annual grants that are awarded to, like I said, individual farmers, ranchers, as well as those local governmental entities. These have a primary focus on just simply improving soil health, and they do have to tie back all to the soil health principles. Unlike the 4 soil health principles that were mentioned earlier, we threw an extra one in there as integrating livestock into land management, which is pretty much the same thing, but the grants have to be founded on those soil health principles. And so really that's the highlight of our program in just a minute or so. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean. And then Anna, last but certainly not least.
Hi, good morning / afternoon, everyone. Anna with the California Climate and Agriculture Network. And we are an advocacy group, a network of researchers, farmers, advocates who focus on getting resources for farmers and ranchers to be more climate resilient. And so California has several climate smart agriculture programs that are managed by the California Department of Food and Ag that relate to improving soil health. And so I'll be focusing on the Healthy Soils program today, which funds on-farm 3-year incentives projects to adopt healthy soils practices that also have greenhouse gas reduction benefits on cropland and grazing lands, as well as funding 2 types of demonstration projects, one which are focused primarily on showcasing practices and another that researches greenhouse gas reduction benefits of potential new additions to the incentives program. And so, types of practices funded would be compost application, cover cropping, hedgerow installation, conservation cover. And I'll also mention that California has a few other climate smart ag programs, the alternative manure management program, which funds dairies to use dry manure management strategies. And about 2/3 of the grantees in that program are composting manure to apply to their fields, orchards, or pastures. And then we also have the statewide water efficiency and enhancement program, which funds on-farm irrigation improvements that both reduce water use and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, like soil moisture monitoring or drip irrigation. And then the state has an organic transition pilot program to help farmers who face higher barriers in transitioning to organic. And then a portion of some of those programs helps fund our Climate Smart Ag Technical Assistance Program, which helps with access and implementation and verification and participation in those programs.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for helping to orient us to what's going on in each of these states. Sometimes the complete list, sometimes just a zoom in. So the next question is a bit of a 2-part question. If you can share something about the impetus for creating these programs, or what the primary goals are, because they can vary, sometimes specifically on soil health, sometimes on other things. And then part 2, if there's anything that you can share about tracking of outcomes, or if you want to throw in some of the program achievements, you can. But the tracking of outcomes either currently or aspirationally when it comes to meeting those goals. And we'll move from west to east this time. So Anna, we'll start with you.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, so with the Healthy Soils program, the goal there is the program was created in 2016, was to really support farmers and ranchers in becoming more climate resilient and then also helping reduce greenhouse gas benefits. So that connection is important for this program. And so, as I mentioned, it's primarily through the on-farm incentives and the research and demonstration projects. And so all of the applicants use CDFA's Healthy Soils Program Comment Planner, which uses the USDA NRCS Comment Planner or Comment Farm methodology to estimate GHG reduction benefits. And the program has awarded about $160 million to over 2,000 on-farm projects impacting about 180,000 acres, with an estimated 1.6 million metric tons of CO2 reduction over the expected lifespan of the projects. And also requires that soil organic matter testing, as Kayla shared. And it's also funded about 80 demonstration projects with outreach to about 1,000 farmers. And CDFA funded an evaluation of the program completed by Cal Poly that was released in 2024. That also looked at a few of the other climate smart ag programs to better understand program experience, practice adoption, perceived benefits of the program, and motivations for participation, and how technical assistance was used, as well as some other factors. And so one finding I'll highlight from that evaluation is that Healthy Soils program participants planned to continue using about 71% of funded practices and plan to expand about 64% of funded practices, suggesting that the program is successful in helping farmers try out new practices because the program has to be implemented on a new field or new acreage to get funding. And then, so suggesting that it's spurring adoption and also spurring those farmer to farmer connections.
Fabulous. Thank you, Anna. Definitely know those farmer to farmer connections are so important for longer term practice adoption. So continuing eastward now, Dean, please.
Thank you. So the goal of the program, and I'm going to take this directly from the Act because one thing we do at NMDA is we tie it directly back to kind of the letter of the law, so to speak. But the sole focus of the program is to improve the health, yield, and profitability of the soils of the state. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a small research component to NMDA's Healthy Soil Program. But the vast majority of funds, which is roughly $250,000 each year, the vast majority of those, we want those on the ground to improve the health, yield, and profitability of farmers, ranchers, and land managers across the state. We do track progress through both baseline soil testing and infield assessments pre and post project. I did mention that these are annual projects, and so a lot of times annually there's not drastic improvements in soil health, but we do conduct follow-up with producers that have participated in the program to look at practice adoption and long-term soil health benefits. As stated earlier, it's only been in place since 2019, so long-term soil health benefits is that's kind of a questionable thing at this point, but we do follow up, and we're looking at exploring how to look at the long-term benefits over time and how to track that most effectively. Like I said, our main goal is to help farmers and ranchers improve the soil on their operation, and so we want these funds to be on the ground. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dean. And then Doug, you're sorry, just kidding. Danielle and then Doug. Sorry, I was looking at the order for the next question. Danielle.
Great. So I will focus on kind of two programs for this question. So the impetus for our water quality certification program, water quality, clearly it was a big goal of that, but I also want to highlight the recognition piece that this program offers farmers who I feel like that gets missed a lot. So the recognition is really important. And then just as really focusing on that voluntary conservation opportunity. And so this program was launched out of the Dayton administration in Minnesota and was really founded as a federal state partnership focused on that voluntary on-farm conservation. It included kind of an MOU that was signed with then USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack and EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson. And really they kind of came together to convene state agencies, ag partners to develop this pilot program in Minnesota that has been really successful. I also want to add that the water quality certification program has a unique policy feature and provides regulatory certainty to participating farmers who all sign a 10-year contract for their 10-year certification. And so that was kind of another sort of interesting thing that they were testing out with this program. And then the second program I'll talk about, which is also out of our Department of Ag, is our equipment grant. And as I mentioned earlier, we've heard over the years from farmers union members and other commodity group organizations that we work closely with that there's just this gap around equipment and equipment access and investment. And so that really elevated to MFU and other ag groups and kind of came together in a few years ago to really work at the legislature and lobby and support this program. And then just real quickly, I can talk about outcomes. So for the water quality certification program, those outcomes are tracked. Each certification is mapped on GIS with the practices and the land and the new practices that are implemented, which really allows for those kind of pollution reduction calculations and estimators to be done, which the program does for every single certification. So tracking like phosphorus reductions, sediment reductions, in addition to a mid-certification audit that each farm or review audit that each farm will go under with program staff. And the Soil Health Equipment Grant is really looking at, they pay close attention to geography of where the grants are awarded around the state. The equipment type, which is also kind of the soil health practice, most commonly are reduced till, no-till, cover crop are kind of the biggies here. And they also do track kind of annual estimated acres that are affected or treated by with that new equipment. And I can share the estimate for this last year of award. Currently, the current year of grants are under review, but it was about 130, just over 130,000 acres that that had equipment that will have soil health practices because of the equipment grant that they were awarded. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Danielle. And now, Doug.
Yeah, Sam. So I'll focus on the ACAP program and just touch on the others real quickly. But the Ag Conservation Assistance Program, again, the newer program that we have, really the impetus for this, we all know that farmers are some of the best stewards of the land, and we try to tell that story at every opportunity and want to do the right thing by installing conservation that improves water quality, but practices are at times cost prohibitive or there's lack of technical assistance. But farmers are constantly managing risk, as I believe Bianca mentioned, and conservation funding helps to manage those long-term risks. But really the impetus behind ACAP, Pennsylvania, as you know, geographically is located in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Pennsylvania farmers have been historically under tremendous pressure to do their part to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. But 33,000 farms in the Bay watershed, upwards of 90% of the nutrient reductions that are part of the Bay Agreement fall on Pennsylvania agriculture in the ag, I should say on the ag sector. But Watershed Implementation Plan 3, the third iteration of the plan that the states come together and agree on from 2019, pointed out it had the largest stakeholder engagement of any of the previous plans, and it pointed out that there needs to be a dedicated state fund for voluntary incentive-based conservation. So really that we had farm and environmental groups alike who coalesced behind that message and really advocated for that funding. And then we, as a result, had the Clean Streams Fund, and I can get into details later on about how that's funded, but it resulted in $220 million in ARPA funds that were put toward the Clean Streams Fund. $154 million of that goes toward this ACAP program. And that's about roughly 70% of those investments are being made in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, even though it's a statewide program. And then just echoing what Danielle said with our REAP tax credit program, equipment, certainly, historically back to 2007 when that program first started, the tax credit program, a real need there to have some sort of fill some gap or incentive for conservation equipment. New to that now, we added drones for spreading cover crops to the list of equipment that we offer incentivized through those tax credits. But then the Sustainable Agriculture Board, and again, a newer initiative actually of an old law that exists since 1994. Senator Noah Wenger back then, one of the founders of the State Farmland Preservation Program here in Pennsylvania, created this program, but the board was never appointed and was never activated. But several years ago, when we heard about the possibility of a federal funding opportunity or program through the Farm Bill, whenever those discussions were occurring, we wanted to align Pennsylvania and our partners to potentially bring in some funding or technical assistance that's very intentional for soil health, recognizing that that's the foundation for all of our conservation goals. And then just on the tracking side, we have through our Department of Environmental Protection Practice Keeper, which tracks those practices statewide for reporting to the Chesapeake Bay Program, EPA, but also separately, we track them on a GIS that we created for our ACAP program, and working to quantify some of those soil health and climate benefits as well using tools that are there. So we've been working on that. We have a public-facing dashboard we're getting ready to release. We'll be able to share that with you all shortly if you're interested, and that would have a component to it, hopefully, that tracks soil health. So back to you, Sam.
Fabulous. And then, Kayla, I'd like to invite you, since you did this research, before we get to the next question, where we'll ask everybody about how their programs are funded, which is one of the most submitted questions that we got in the Zoom registration. I'm not surprised at all. Kayla, if you can tell us anything more, maybe fill in some gaps from some other states that you've seen for this program about goals or outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were doing this kind of 10,000 foot view of programs across the country, we did notice some trends begin to emerge that are definitely reflected in all of the very fascinating origin stories of the programs from the other panelists. So we kind of looked at this in two different ways. One factor that we looked at was programs' purpose statements, which, as Dean mentioned, can be very informative to show you the direction a program is intending to take and what it intends to do with the money and staff it has. And another one is what it's measuring on the back end. So that would be our outcomes tab. So we looked for, when we were looking at purpose statements, we were looking for certain keywords and kind of coding it into the categories that we picked essentially for the dashboard. So we have a keyword that's water quality. We've got soil conservation, which is kind of focused on the more like nutrient management planning and erosion concerns, and soil health. And then also I think we have one for climate. A lot of the programs are multi-purpose. So many programs have more than one keyword that we assigned to their purpose statement. That's not uncommon at all. When we were looking and putting together some findings about these purpose statements, we kind of noticed historically that some of the that if a purpose statement mentioned something like preventing erosion or improving water quality, it may have been created in reaction to a specific need in the state, such as the Clean Water Act or regulatory compliance with reducing TMDLs, total maximum daily load numbers, in a specific body of water, like Doug mentioned, like the Chesapeake Bay, that kind of thing. So that was oftentimes close in time to when these programs got started, especially if they had a focus on water quality or soil conservation, which are often two sides of the same coin. However, if we saw language around soil quality or viability, these programs might have had different origin stories, and they might actually be structured differently. Like they might fund more specific practices, they might measure different outcomes of success, and in general, all of the programs that we are talking about here, they tend to have multiple benefits. So they can fit into a variety of program purposes, but really, if done well, they can all have similar and significant impacts, regardless of what their original program purpose is. Because as we know, a conservation practice does not just have one benefit, it has a suite of benefits. So it really can work out regardless of the direction it goes. Just in terms of stats, a large majority of our on-farm conservation programs, which is the cost share and direct technical assistance, it was 84% of them mentioned water quality in their purpose statements, which was notable. A little over half mentioned some version of soil conservation, and only about a third mentioned soil health for the on-farm conservation programs. However, interestingly, when we looked at the research and demonstration programs, which there are a much smaller number of programs and they tended to be newer, actually about 2/3 of those, 6 out of 9, included soil health in their purpose statement. So it's kind of a trend that we saw originating. So some of the older programs, the more well-established programs, might have looked at some of the more original reasons for addressing soil concerns, whereas some of the more innovative research and demonstration programs might be focused more on soil health and improving the in-field resources on a farm. The other one that is also telling, like I said, is what kinds of metrics these programs are collecting. So we were focusing mostly on conservation outcomes as opposed to like acres enrolled or dollars spent, even though we do collect dollars spent because everybody needs to know that question. So when a program is measuring their impact and their success on something like conservation outcomes, it takes a little bit more of a fundamental lens. It's still important to measure things like the performance of a program as a program, like how many farms are participating and how much it costs to administer a program. But when you look at the actual on-the-ground outcomes and do things like soil testing for organic matter, active carbon, soil respiration, all the good things that Bianca was mentioning earlier, not only, like Anna mentioned, can it have an impact on how farmers are participating and how they see the impacts on their land, and they might be more inclined to continue the practices even without support once the initial risk barrier has been passed. And they could also, that when you focus on things like soil health and viability, there might be a bigger focus on kind of future improvements to the land, as opposed to repairing past harms caused by things like erosion and imperfect nutrient application. But the trade-off always is, as many of you, the program staff know and that we've talked to, soil testing is challenging, and it can be really cost and labor intensive. So it just might not be in the cards for some programs. But we notice that it can take your program in a slightly different direction, and give you some concrete results to your efforts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for your answers. So now let's get to the question that's most on everybody's minds. How are your programs funded? You know, we know state budgets can be tight. We're going into, for many states, another year of looking at their own state appropriations with new challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about how your programs are funded? Each of these programs are funded in very different ways, things like general funds, sales taxes, and maybe in somewhat brief so that we can get to the rest of the questions too. And we'll start, Danielle, with you.
Thank you. Yeah, so in Minnesota, we have a clean water fund that is a hugely important source of funding for our state conservation programs, including for agriculture. And so this was an amendment as part the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment that was passed in 2008, and it's a sales tax. So it's a 3/8% sales tax that then funnels money into a couple of funds, one of which is the Clean Water Fund. And I can share for the kind of 24-25 biennium, the Clean Water Fund was able to appropriate just shy of $320 million for state water quality related efforts. The water quality certification program that I have been speaking about is funded by this fund. So it enabled that program to launch, along with other research and implementation initiatives across the state. And so we're really fortunate to have that, and that has been hugely important. I'll also add that Minnesota is one of the states that received a climate pollution reduction grant from the Environmental Pollution Agency recently. And Minnesota's grant is focused on climate smart food systems. It's $100 million, $20 million of that going to the Minnesota Department of Ag for ag practice implementation. And so some of that money is being used to invest in the soil health equipment grant. So I wanted to kind of flag that. The soil health equipment grant is also, it was initially funded with just a general fund pilot back in 2022 at $500,000, wildly successful, wildly oversubscribed. And so since then, the Clean Water Fund, so the Clean Water Council that advises on how that fund is spent, appropriated additional funding from their pool for the equipment grant. So we're really happy for that. And so that equipment grant is now seeing general fund, Clean Water Fund, and climate pollution reduction grant investments.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. Dean.
Okay, the NMDA Healthy Soil Program is it's funded through a reoccurring legislative appropriation. One great thing about our relationship with New Mexico NRCS is we do have a contribution agreement with NRCS. The financial amount varies year to year, but the technical assistance that NRCS provided is through conservation planning, and so that is a huge asset to our program. In addition to that, as of 2 years ago, there is an option for New Mexico residents to contribute a portion or all of their tax refund to the Healthy Soil Program. So that is our funding source.
Awesome. Thank you, Dean. And next is Doug. Doug, how are Pennsylvania's programs funded?
Thanks, Sam. Real quick. Yeah, so real quick, again, I mentioned the Clean Streams Fund, the legislation from several years ago in Pennsylvania that provided 154 million for our new Ag Conservation Assistance Program. That was from ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act, where states got to decide how they wanted to use their portion of funds. A portion of ours went toward this new program for ag best management practices. Was a game changer for us. Since that time, now just the tight deadlines, the funds had to be committed by the end of 2024 and have to be spent by the end of 2026. So we're at it fast and furious here in Pennsylvania, ensuring that those funds will be spent by the end of next year. A lot of challenges along the way, but I think we're in a good place. And since that time last year, we also got a state dedicated fund for the program since it was had such a successful kickoff, and that's using personal income taxes, 35 million each year. So we have concurrent state funds running for it. REAP program, the tax credit program, that's tax revenue on income taxes. Sustainable Agriculture Board that I mentioned. The seed money for this to get us up and running has been a grant from EPA, Infrastructure Investment and Job Act, most effective basin funding for the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We're really trying to demonstrate its interest and success so we can call out some dedicated state funds or, some funding, hopefully from other federal sources. But yeah, that's there was, as I mentioned, I may have mentioned this watershed implementation plan 3 that was developed, called out soil health as a recommendation for helping to achieve Chesapeake Bay water quality goals, which was really encouraging and good to see. But that's sort of the focus of the EPA grant that we received as seed money. And then the Conservation Excellence Grant Program, as I mentioned, that's funded through our State Nutrient Management Act. There's administrative funds. It's a restricted fund out of the general line that we have here in the budget.
Awesome. Great, thank you, Doug. And then Anna, California's programs.
Great. So over the years, the Healthy Soils Program has received funding from a few different sources. It's received general fund revenue at some point. It's received bond funding, and it has also received funding from California's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is funded through our Cap and Invest, formerly our Cap and Trade, Cap and Trade program. And so one challenge has been that we don't have a consistent appropriation for the program. And so it's something we're advocating for each year. But we are campaigning in collaboration with other advocates to work to get some consistent funding for agriculture from that Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund to hopefully be able to support the program with more consistent funding, because it is continually oversubscribed, as other folks have mentioned in other states.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, I'm going to move us along to our next question. And we have a couple coming into the chat and just a few more that we've prepared. So let's try to get through these quickly so we can get to the Q&A from the chat. So I mentioned Farm Bill programs at the outset, providing a foundation. Some of you have already mentioned some of the ways that the programs you're talking about complement or communicate with NRCS itself or NRCS programs, or fill gaps like funding equipment. Anything else that you'd like to add about how your state programs are complementing, building on, or communicating with NRCS programs in brief? And we'll start with Dean.
Thank you. Our Healthy Soil Program, we have a strong relationship with NRCS. As I mentioned earlier, NRCS does provide conservation planning services for all individual applicants as a requirement to apply for the grant. And based on that, it allows NRCS to then also work with those individuals to fund things that may not be eligible through the Healthy Soil Program, such as large infrastructure improvements and things like that. And so we've really built that relationship to get those individuals in the door of NRCS in order to apply for our program, but also it helps NRCS then lead those individuals for larger projects that cannot be funded through the Healthy Soil Program. And so that's As far as complementing, I really think the Healthy Soil program is kind of like I would say the first step into building soil health, and then they can then look at larger infrastructure improvements through NRCS programs. And with that relationship through conservation planning, they can identify the resource concerns that exist on that land, and then move in the direction of uh, building them into NRCS federal programs, with our program still providing that first step for a lot of producers. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Dean. Doug.
Yeah, so we'll just focus on ACAP for this one, but half of the projects, those 1,400 projects that we have with farmers, are funded at least in part by NRCS through their EQIP program. We have this symbiotic relationship with NRCS where we rely very heavily on them, and they rely on us in terms of funding financial assistance. These projects are bundled together, especially the ones that are cost prohibitive, the structural ones, but certainly a soil health component to it if we're talking the nutrient management step with land applying the nutrients. That's we rely very heavily on a strong presence here of NRCS on that side, and then also on the technical assistance side, engineering and design of these practices is it's crucial that we have NRCS at the table. I can get into, if we have time, about a technical assistance center that we created through Penn State University to try to meet those demands. But bottom line is, yeah, we rely very heavily on a partnership with NRCS here to carry out this work.
All right, thank you, Doug. Anna, we'll go to you and then to Danielle.
Great. So the California Healthy Soils Program practice standards are typically based on the NRCS CPS standards, and the payment rates are also based on those payment scenarios, and they're 2 times to reflect that they're intended to pay for the whole cost of the practice, generally on a per acreage basis. And so that's one way. And then another way is, since there's some overlap in what the practices or what the programs fund, farmers who aren't able to get state funding might be able to get NRCS funding. And there are some TA providers who can help assist with both those sources. And in California, the University of California Ag and Natural Resources, the Department of Food and Ag, NRCS, and the State Association of Resource Conservation Districts developed a memorandum of understanding to better coordinate their services. And then there's some overlap in office space with RCDs and NRCS staff sharing services and TA.
Thanks, Anna. Danielle.
Right, and so very similar to other states, our water quality certification program and our soil and waters all follow those NRCS practice standards. So of course that includes, through the planning implementation process, working with our local staff, and then also our water quality certification process is really kind of another pathway for folks to reach NRCS and NRCS programs. Those certifiers are locally based, often at the local soil and water. And as someone's going through the certification process, they may need to install, whatever practice that is in order to mitigate a risk to water quality. And so they're very much working together. I'll also add that for our equipment grant, that's really filling a gap, as we've talked about. Funding for ag equipment is rare outside of private loans, and federal NRCS funds certainly cannot be used for steel. And so with that equipment grant, one thing that the department has done is they really prioritize conservation planning and the multiple benefits that applicants can demonstrate. So folks who are working towards water quality certification, for example, get additional points because it's building up that system of using all the programs and all the funding sources available.
Awesome. Thank you. So we started to sort of pivot towards technical assistance, and we know how essential technical assistance is to successful integration of practices into a farm or ranch operation. And this can come from NRCS agent or Soil Water Conservation District or RCD in California, from another farmer or from the private sector. You talk in brief about how your state is thinking about addressing the need for good TA to assist with adoption, especially since we've seen a 25% reduction in numbers of NRCS agents throughout the country since this time last year. And we'll start with Doug.
Thanks, Sam. It's a great question. Hopefully you can hear me. I think there's a broadband issue on my end, but early on with the ACAP program, the Ag Conservation Assistance Program, it was identified that technical assistance was the biggest risk factor in carrying out the work. So in response to that, we created a technical assistance center through Penn State University, funded by the commission through our ACAP administrative funds in partnership with NRCS to help build the overall capacity. We developed this PAS, it's called Practice Approval System, similar to what Wisconsin has, where we're trying to create capacity by enabling conservation professionals at the district level to design and implement practices and have that job approval if it doesn't require a high level of engineering, and then free up valuable NRCS time to tackle the NRCS engineering type practices. So we're in a second year right now. Penn State University, our land grant university, is incorporating this into their curriculum in the classrooms, and we're really hoping that it positions us to be kind of a leader when it comes to ag conservation workforce development. So very excited to see how that turns out, but it's called the Center for Ag Conservation Assistance Training. Again, the idea is to build technical assistance capacity and not rely as heavily on NRCS, and to help relieve them of some of the complete, overload that they have in terms of their work.
Thanks, Doug.
There's a list of other things here I just want to point out real quick. Organizations locally that are nonprofit, the No-Till Alliance is an organization, farmer mentor program here in Pennsylvania. It had its 20th anniversary. Tremendous growth over time. Young people coming to the table, excited to learn about soil health and no-till practices, working with the Soil Health Coalition. And also I want to give a shout out to PASA, Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture, with their soil health benchmark study. I think all those efforts have really put us in a good place, Pennsylvania-wise anyway. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. I'm glad you added that, since I know we have some folks from the Alliance and from PASA on the line. So Danielle, to you next.
Yes, thank you. I'll just note that at Farmers Union, we've been hearing a lot about, the value of TA and advisors, and have a few initiatives right now that we're working on in Minnesota. One is we started just kind of a conservation advisor spotlight storytelling series that we're pushing out through our channels, and have gotten really good responses from that, and are learning that there really are a lot of organizations providing TA, whether that's like a nonprofit, your traditional soil and water, some egg co-ops in Minnesota are doing this work, but it's hard to find the right person or even know about opportunities. So we're really trying to elevate that and elevate the people who are boots on the ground faces doing this work in Minnesota. And we're thinking through how Farmer Network, how Farmers Union, Farm Bureau, or commodity groups can really step in and help elevate and connect with the advisors that are out there and connect their membership. I'll also just add that we've been thinking a lot about how the idea of a conservation advisor is a great way to bring new people into the profession. And we're working with U of M Extension to develop some new training resources for advisors that really integrate climate resilience and thinking through future weather planning, weather conditions, and how that's an important piece of this conservation advisor's knowledge as well.
Fabulous. Thank you, Danielle. Dean.
Yeah, the reduction in federal staff definitely created a bottleneck in our program. In response to that, we worked with the soil and water conservation districts across the state, as well as NRCS, to have NRCS actually provide conservation planning training to soil and water conservation district staff. That would then allow them to be level 1 certified planners, and then we could as has been mentioned, kind of lighten the load on NRCS, but also build that capacity within those soil and water conservation districts as they implement their own conservation programs, separate and apart from our Healthy Soil program. And so that's one thing that that we've been focusing on is to get the Soil and Water Conservation District staff trained in conservation planning. It's kind of on hold right now, but we intend to get that finished up by the hopefully by the end of this year, first part of next.
Right. Thank you, Dean. And then finally, Anna.
Great. So the Climate Smart Ag TA program that I mentioned was actually created a few years after the other Climate Smart Ag programs through legislation sponsored by CalCan, and acknowledging this need and seeing the need for TA to help access the programs. And so that's been the primary way that's helped people access the programs. And it's also funded some University of California Ag and Natural Resources community education specialists to help people access the program, and also gives grants to resource conservation districts or nonprofits. And so I just wanted to note that the Cal Poly evaluation found that 50% of the respondents who were in the Healthy Soils program reported that they worked with a TA provider, and that most of them found that they were either very or extremely important for the project's success, and especially for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, where 46% of them said they found TA extremely important. And the most recent cycle of HSP gave out funds through block grants to organizations to work on a more regional level to try to have a more regionally targeted and coordinated approach to TA. And I also wanted to mention that there was also legislation passed this year that CalCan worked on in coordination with the department and some other folks to increase the flexibility of what that program can fund to help really support more training and capacity building at TA organizations, acknowledging that that's a really important part of helping TA providers be able to provide high quality wraparound TA.
Fabulous. Thank you, Anna. Well, before we get to the Q&A for the last few minutes, this has been such an amazing diversity of ideas. I'm hoping that everybody who joined us today, that this gave you a lot of great ideas and food for thought. If you can, in 30 seconds or less, I'll give you a challenge. AFT has been working these last several years with partners to create a new federal program to match state funding, provide more to do more of these wonderful things with. It was included in last year's House mark of the Farm Bill that passed out of committee. It has bipartisan support. If you could briefly say something about, share something hopeful. What could you see your state doing with more funding, with some matching funding? And we'll start 30 seconds or less. We'll start with Danielle.
Great, thank you. So I'll just highlight in Minnesota, something we're really excited about right now is the oat market. And so we are seeing some really great investment in southern Minnesota with a farmer-owned oat mill facility that's going to be opening in 2026 to really provide that local capacity for processing and that opportunity to diversify the landscape, grow food grade products in our state. And then also oats provide soil health benefits and often require fewer inputs, and then also have their seasonality offers opportunities for more cover cropping and living green cover. And so we're really excited about that developing market and the opportunity that we have to see some oat acres mixed in with our corn and soy in the southern part of the state.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. Anna.
Great. Yeah, so as I mentioned, one challenge for the program has been having consistent fundings, and the program has been oversubscribed. In the most recent round, there was over 100 million requested. And so just, being able to have consistent funding, which then allows program applicants and staff to plan around consistent funding timelines annually, would be really great.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anna. Dean.
One thing that would excite me about additional federal funding is the opportunity to reach some of our larger scale commodity growers. Traditionally, they have participated in a small amount But I think the addition of federal funds could allow us to reach some of those larger scale commodity growers. In addition to, providing more education to to the general public on soil health.
Thank you, Dean. And Doug, final word on the planned portion of the panel.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. So definitely a dedicated fund or additional federal funding for soil health through our Sustainable Agriculture Board would be really a great thing. We think we could put it to good use, and we could use it to incubate public-private partnerships to leverage additional conservation dollars from private industry and bring them to the table as well, and want them to engage in sustainability and by offering premium increases. So I think it would be a full cycle of benefits or suite of benefits on the marketing side, on the soil health, farm management side, and certainly I think for us, if we were able to bring some more federal funds in, we could build that here locally. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. And I knew this would happen because you have such wonderful things to say. We're at time for our panel. There was one question that came in that got a few check marks. So if folks can, I see somebody answering this in the chat already. Thank you, Danielle. There was a question about successes or challenges with equipment sharing and rental programs. If anybody wants to add a thought or two to that before we adjourn. I see Danielle answered it, so I'll say this verbally. One challenge is the knowledge needed to operate specialized equipment such as strip till machines. And then, I don't see any other questions coming in. We certainly had other questions that we could get to, but we're at time. So I want to say thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you so much to Bianca and Kayla, and everybody who helped to make this webinar go and happen. And thank you to all of you for joining, for your time. Please reach out if you have additional questions. Happy to answer them. And hopefully this gave you a lot of really great food for thought, great ideas, particularly as we go into 2026.